Well, hello. My name is Beni Garcia. I work here at Polara Health. I'm so glad that you've joined us today. And today we've been doing a series called Resilience Tools for Parents. And this wonderful series has been brought to, well, wonderful. I'm partial. I think it's a wonderful series brought to us, made possible by the CRN grant. It's the Crisis Response Network through a grant through SAMHSA. And it's really their goal is to kind of just support the community through all these just weird changes and things that we're trying to get used to and transitions because of COVID. It's just been going on for so long, and it has so many long-reaching effects. Some of them we don't even realize. And so this series, Resilience Tools for Parents, and if you haven't seen some of the others, you might want to check some of them out. We've got one on self-care that even if you're not a parent could be good. This is really good if you are a parent. It's good for everyone. And then some other ones that really kind of explain about the stress response. So if you haven't checked those out, I'd encourage you to do that. And these are all tools that are going to help us with our stress response and help us kind of navigate this time so that we can get back to a nice set point, a nice calmer set point where we can live life in a more empowered way. So today's topic is the power of routines and schedules at home. And most parents of children kind of already know the importance of having schedules at home. And some of us do it more naturally, and some of us really struggle. Maybe that's just not how you roll. You're more like, going with the flow, and that's okay. But what we know about the way our bodies work is that when it knows what it's going to come next, what's going to come next, there's this level, this level of that happens, right? You kind of know what's going to come next, and your stress response lowers. And this is especially true for everyone, but especially true for children. So let's talk a little bit about that today. And we're going to hopefully equip you with some ideas and some tools that you can implement right away that you might find helpful for yourself or for your children. All right, so let's jump in. So here's kind of an opening question to consider. What's the most challenging part of the day with your children? Something to think about. When we have children, it's usually a most challenging part. It can be like trying to get out that door in the morning to go to school or to go wherever it is you need to go to. I don't know what it is. Everything can be wonderful and fine until you have to get out that door. And then it's not so wonderful and fine. Or is it bedtime? Is it really hard for those little ones or big ones to be able to get to bed and stay in bed? Is that a challenging part? Just kind of think about that for a second. All right. So we're going to go from big and then we'll go down into the nitty gritty. So we're going to start a little bit kind of out in the ethers and kind of think about just the rhythm of our life. Like when we're talking about schedules and routines and things like that, I want us to think about how our entire personal universe began with the sound of a heartbeat. Ba-bum, 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 right? Our entire world, our entire everything begins with these rhythmic, repetitive cycles and sounds in our lives. Our whole body is used to it and it regulates to it. So I want to kind of go there with you and remind us of that. It's one of the reasons why schedules and routines and rhythms in the day, in the week, and in the year can be so comforting and grounding sometimes for us. So just to get us into that space, we're going to watch the first couple of minutes of this kind of older documentary by National Geographic.
From the first dawn of creation to the end of time. Our world, our lives, and every living thing are attuned to a cosmic song. celestial cadence of light and dark, of ebb and flow, of heat and cold, all set into motion by the epic dance of the sun, moon, and earth. These are the rhythms of life itself.
I just thought that was a helpful thing to get us into this space, to really start to kind of actually respect that our whole entire life is governed by these rhythms and these predictable patterns. There's light and dark. There's the sun and the moon. There's the moon cycles, the ebb and flow of the ocean. There's heat and there's cold. There's seasons. We know what to expect at a certain time of year. A certain time of year, it's gonna get hot. Certain time of year, it's gonna be cold and snowy and icy. And then there's certain kind of years that if you wait 5 minutes, it'll change. At least if you live in Prescott. That we've got our heartbeat. We've got the in and out of our breath. These are the things that bring grounding. Imagine when you're at night, in the middle of the night, and you just cannot sleep, and maybe you have a lot on your mind, and it's just not a good time. It's dark, and you're not in a good place. But the one thing that kind of keeps us going is we know that the sun is going to rise. We know that it's going to be day, and that maybe you're going to feel different when that light comes. It's very grounding. In fact, if you ever go through any kind of trauma, in fact, let's move on to the next slide here. It's well known that rest and routine are two of the most prescribed things after any kind of trauma, whether it's a psychological trauma or a physical trauma, right? They always say rest. We want to balance out all this activity, all this chaos, all this stuff. We want to balance that out, and then routine. This helps you to do the hot. Like if it's a physical, you'll do the hot and then maybe the cold compress, the hot and the cold, or you gotta take your medicine in certain rhythms, right? We would be remiss if we didn't honor that our bodies and our psyches are really deeply rooted in these rhythms and routines and these patterns. So Harry Wong, he's one of the most sought after speakers in education today. And one of his books is called The First Days of School. It's a standard classic with millions of teachers and schools around, at least in the United States. And one of the points that he drives hard with teachers is that it is more important to spend time and repetition at the beginning of every school year, teaching, practicing, and reinforcing procedures, routines, expectations, and patterns of the class. He stresses that teachers should not worry about academics all that much during this first 2 weeks of school, because careful attention to laying the groundwork at the beginning of the school year literally sets the stage for an effective learning environment for the rest of the year. And this investment markedly reduces behavior issues in the classroom. It creates lower stress and a more enjoyable environment, and it literally increases test scores. And so if this works so well in the classroom, I truly believe that it will also work really, really well at home. And so here's his quote: "The number one problem in the classroom is not discipline. It's the lack of procedures and routines. When kids know what to expect, it kind of solves a lot of problems. It solves a lot of problems. And part of learning what to expect includes what to do, how to solve these problems, what are the consequences if you don't solve them in an appropriate way. Like when we lay this out for children, for adults even, there's really not that many questions, and it helps regulate us, helps us feel grounded. So I'm not really sharing you all this information about like schools, because I read it in a book. Actually, I actually worked in schools for over 15 years, and I saw this to be true in year after year. Teachers would come in bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, like ready to teach this classroom. And the ones that spent a lot of time just honing in on, this is what we do, this is how we sit down, this is the routine, this is what we do when we line up. Oh, here, let's try that again until we get it right. This is what we do if you want to ask me a question. This is how you get to go to the bathroom. This is how. When they spent that time, invested that time, it made all the difference. Those were the classrooms you would walk in and you just felt good. The children felt good because there was a routine. So I want to suggest that as parents, if we do the same thing, every time we kind of have like a life change, whether that's a new transition for your child, like starting school or starting the summer or moving to a new home, you can reap really similar rewards. So by creating age-appropriate procedures and routines for our children, the amount of disciplining will be reduced. And this could also include just including regular time for regulating activities. Like when we get home from school, we go outside and play. We go and we work all that out. Because what happens is if they don't have a way to move some of that energy out of their body, it's going to come out in other ways. So that's just a thought, that's an idea. So let's talk about routines and schedules. Why do we want them? How do we do them? What are some tools? That's what we're going to talk about for the rest of our time together. So here's the why. So why should I prioritize routines and schedules? And this comes from a lot of these I had written down, and then I came upon this article that had them all down. I'm like, oh, this is so good. So I'm going to here's that particular where I got that. So I'm referencing it here. It's www.thisandthatparenting.com. So this and that parenting, and it's not and, it's just the letter N, this letter N, thatparenting.com. And the article is called Create a Daily Routine for Your Family. So if you want to read a little bit more, they go a little bit more into detail. I highly recommend this article. So here's some of the whys. There are studies that show that it reduces challenging behaviors. It just does. It reduces stress levels in the home altogether, including yours. When you live by a daily routine, you're going to be more likely to reach your goals than if you live on impulses. Isn't that interesting? Like, because you have a plan, you have a goal, you're learning. It's this life skill of learning to plan things out. Adults feel a sense of purpose, and children, they feel a sense of security because they know what's happening next. Families with routines, they have healthier habits. They just do. If they have routines, you're going to be more likely to sit at the table on a regular basis as a family, which is huge when we're talking about wanting to set the stage for good mental health for our children and for ourselves, having that time to put our screens away and connect with one another. When we have routines, it sets the stage for healthier habits for sure. And then lastly, children who grow up with a routine, they end up developing a sense of responsibility and time management skills. They just learn it because they've lived it. And so these are some ideas of why you might want to consider doing it, especially if this isn't like how you naturally roll. It can really help your home life if you consider trying some of the things that we're going to talk about today. Okay, so how do I create routines and schedules that will work for my family? This is a really good question. That might be the next question that's kind of coming up in your mind. So here's a little list. Okay. So number one, you can just kind of brainstorm just the essentials that fit in your day that you need to fit. You're going to fit things like, just there's some obvious ones, right? Like getting ready to leave to go to school or work, going to bed, brushing teeth, feeding animals, taking certain vitamins or things. Other things that you might want to make sure you put on your list are things like, exercise, or making sure your kids have lots of regulating activities like exercise or playing time or whatever. For some people, if you have a spiritual practice, put that on your list. Okay, we want to schedule self-care in there. So we're not worried about what time of day we're going to do all this stuff. We're just going to put it all down, put all the stuff that we want to remember to prioritize and put in our day somehow. Okay, that's step one. Step two, and here's some ideas. So writing down your meals, getting ready activities, appointments that you may have on a regular basis, write chores, right? Time for chores, bedtime. So number two, remember to add things that are specific to you and to your child's needs, right? Like medicine, exercise, screen time budgets. That's a good one. Schoolwork, naps, if that's something that happens in your home, self-care, like we said. And then number three, now you can take all your things and start to organize them in your daily schedule. Like, when will this go? When does this go? When does this go? When does this go? One way that I like to sometimes work when I have a lot of things to figure out and to organize is I put things on stickies, and that way I can move it around, and then I move it around, and then now it's just an easy way to move things around, not having to rewrite it. Okay, so this is just like a preliminary how to kind of set a routine. So when you're organizing your day, there's a few things to keep in mind. Okay, we want to keep balance in mind. And a couple of things that you really, really want to consider is your in-breath and your out-breath and margin. So let me tell you what I mean by that. So, as we started out this talk, we talked about all these different patterns and rhythms that are in our lives: the light, the dark, the night, the day, the hot, the cold, all the things, right? Our heartbeat, our breathing, we're governed by these things. And so really one thing to consider when you're creating a schedule, whether it's a schedule for, hey, I'm gonna be babysitting kids for 2 hours. Let me create a little rhythm. Let me create a little schedule for that time. I guarantee you, if you create a schedule for those 2 or 3 hours, you're gonna have a lot more success. And when you're putting together that schedule, think in breath and out breath. And what I mean by that is, if you start with an activity that's really active, like, okay, we're going to go outside and play. After that, build in an in breath. Like, okay, and then we're going to come in and we're going to wash our hands and we're going to sit down and eat. And it's going to be like a quiet time. Maybe eating doesn't have to be quiet. I'm just giving you an example. And then after that, we'll do some arts and crafts. So that's kind of like an out. It's more active. It's more free. And then we're going to have story time. That's an in breath. You kind of see what I'm saying? We want to go out breath, which is expansive, it's free, it's active movement. And then we want to do an in breath. It's calming. It's maybe a little more gentle, it's regulating. And if you kind of at least loosely follow this in breath and out breath when you're planning out a day or a few hours of activity, it really helps children and adults feel more balanced. Okay. And we're not gonna get as antsy if we honor that. The other thing is margin. We don't want to pack our schedules too tight because we've got to make room for life because life is unpredictable, and we need to honor that. And so we don't want to say, hey, from 9:01 to 9:06 we're going to do this, and then from 9:07, like, that's kind of not reasonable. So if you kind of maybe even just lay out the rhythm of the day, you may not even write times down. You just know what comes next and what comes next, and have some maybe there are some punctuated, okay, this happens at 9, around 12 is when we do this, around this time. Depending on how many children you have and their ages, you could use a little timer, just like you would at school when the bell would ring. That was a real wonderful indicator to us. Oh, we're closing our books, we're going to the next class. You can try that at home with like a gentle little thing, like, oh, that means it's time to get ready for lunch. Let's clean up, that sort of thing. That can be also a really helpful tool. All right, so here we have another quote that I just love. It says many, I think is really good here. So many of today's behavioral issues come from children having too much stuff and living a life that's too fast. This comes from a man named Kim John Payne. If I remember correctly, he's from Australia. I've seen him talk on a couple different occasions. He is really fascinating human being to listen to. To make a long story short, is when he first in his career, at the beginning of his career, he went to Cambodia and worked with children who were really struggling with PTSD because of the Khmer Rouge and all the things that were happening there. So he had a lot of years experience, or he had a lot of experience working with children with PTSD and working through that with them. He then moved to the United States, and as he observed the children in the United States, and I don't know what part of the world, what part of the states he was living in at the time, he started to notice that the children had very similar symptoms as the children in Cambodia with PTSD. He's like, what is going on? These children have everything. They have had no major traumas the way that the children in Cambodia had. What's going on? So what he started to realize is that the life in the US is extremely fast-paced. Children spent more time in their car seats than they did in the backyard playing with dirt and running around. They were shuttled from one activity to the next in the name of enrichment, with very little time to just chill and relax and breathe and be curious. And if they were not going somewhere, their caregivers almost always were, right? And so the word hurry is either said or implied hundreds of times in a day. This lack of balance, he believes, is a type of violence with grave consequences on our children's and our mental and physical health. So when we're talking about creating healthy schedules and routines for our children and for ourselves, we want to build in that margin. We don't need to stuff our lives full of enriching activities. We don't. Maybe one, maybe two, if you feel like there's a good balance. So balance is key. Balance is key. So let's talk about some tools and some tips for creating routines and schedules. Okay, so now we kind of set the stage of why you might want to consider this. So let's see if there's anything here that might give you some ideas that you can use. And I imagine that you probably already have a bunch of your own ideas. We're not talking about reinventing the wheel here either. if you're watching this, you clearly care. And so I imagine you already have a lot of good things built in. And so the hope is that this section is going to maybe give you some ideas, or maybe inspire you to maybe make some little changes or some tweaks to make it even better for yourself and your children. So the first thing we're going to talk about are just visual schedules, right? So most children and even adults, we do really well by seeing things. And so there's different apps and different places that we can get visual schedules that are age appropriate, right? So we can Google it. Yeah, we just Google visual schedules and see what comes up, and see if you can get you might start getting inspired by the things that you see. If you go to Pinterest, there's going to be tons of ideas there. Tons of ideas, especially if you're a DIYer and like to do things on your own. Go to Pinterest, see if you can get some ideas of things that you can create on your own. You can go to Etsy. I've seen a lot of these, just people just have so many wonderful ideas. And if you're not the one that wants to actually, or maybe you want to, but you don't have the time to make it yourself, Etsy might be a great place to go, where you can purchase certain kinds of visual schedules. And then if you don't know about this website, it's called Teachers Pay Teachers. Just go to Teachers Pay Teachers, and it's a wonderful, wonderful website, because what it is it has tons, I would say thousands and thousands of resources that were created by teachers, and they upload it. And some of these resources are free. Some of them are just a couple dollars. Of course, it goes up in price, but most of the things are very, very, very affordable. And what they are things that you can download. And you can look things up on everything from visual schedules to math games, if you're wanting to help your child with like math work or science, or there's even regulating activities in there. If you can think it has to do with school children, there's probably something in there for it. So I highly recommend it. Here on your screen, there is a real simple visual schedule that can work with maybe elementary school children. And then I say elementary because they have to know how to read for this one, right? But it's just broken up into 4 sections, right? In the morning, from this to this time, these are the things we do. After you do those things, you do whatever you want. These are the things we do, so they can check it. From this to this time, this looks like maybe it was either during COVID time where they had to do homeschool, or this is a homeschooling one, where it says, okay, during this time, this is what we do. Okay, and then they have a lunch break. And then from 1 to 3, they get to have playtime. And there's all the different kinds of sensory, arts and crafts, music, all that kind of stuff. And then nighttime, here's what we do. Okay, so that's one idea of a real simple visual schedule. Let's look at some more. Let's start with the littles. So I just love this one, because you've got this little one with her mama. So they're having some connection time, which is so wonderful. And they're putting together their day, and it's visual. So this little one that might not be able to read can go, oh, okay, I know what we're doing here. And they're putting it together. So right here, okay, so today's Friday, and we're going to wake up, we're going to pack our lunch, we're going to brush our hair, we're going to get dressed, we're going to have shoes and socks, we're going to pack up, and then we're going to go to school. Okay, let's go. And then maybe the little one's like, maybe mom notices that she's maybe getting distracted, and she'll go, hey, I wonder what's next on our list. Let's go check. Right? And it's not on mom. Come on, you got to do this. Come on, you got to do that. It's on the list. Right? So we can go to the list and go, oh, I haven't brushed my hair yet. Okay, I'll go do that. Right? It kind of just looks like a little guide. I have so many things that I do in my day that if I don't have my guide, I'm lost. So I have my little to-do list guide, which I actually prioritize. But this is a wonderful way to start teaching children how to use that. Here's another one. This is a real good one because there's a tactile part to it, right? So you've got a morning routine, and this is in hopes to empower a child to be able to do things on their own. So the goal here is the child will go to their list, do the next thing on the list. And when they're done, they Velcro their little check mark, like, check, I did it. And there's a real satisfaction when you can put your check mark there. It really is an empowering sort of tool. I love these ones that have a little bit of kinestheticness to it. Here's one for an older child. This one is a free one. This was one I found. It was a COVID-19 daily schedule that you can customize. You can write down the address if you want to. If you're interested, you can just pause this video and write down that web address, and you can go check that out. It's downloadable, it's free, and it's customizable. So that could be for an older child. Here's some other ideas for visual stuff to kind of organize your family. I just love the use of clipboards. I use this at home as well. And each clipboard might have a different thing, might have like the food, or this is what I do in the morning, or here's when you have free time, these are the things that you can do. Here's some ideas if you're bored. When we have family time, these are the things we want to try, we want to remember to do. Oh, it's chore time. Here's my list for that. So this is a wonderful way to make like a little command center. Here's another command center. This is on the fridge. This is really fun because everyone in the house has their own list, and then there's a communal calendar. So everyone knows what's happening in the day. And that's really fun for the children to see that they're not the only ones with chores and things to do. Mom and dad have them too. It's real fun to just set that up and use it as a family. I really love this particular chore chart. You can use this idea in different ways, but what I like about it is that it's also very kinesthetic. So you've got all your things that you got to do on the left-hand side. And then when you're done, you literally have to unstick that Velcro and you get to cross the midline and put it on the right-hand side there. It's very satisfying, and it can give you a dopamine hit. It feels good. Some children really need more of that physical kinesthetic activity to help them, just to reinforce it. Yes, I did it. And while we're talking about chores, just in case you would like that, I do highly, highly recommend that children have chores at home. That's kind of built into their regular everyday schedule. Because if you teach them now, the hope is as they get older, it'll just be a regular part of their day, a regular part of their life. And so here's some ideas of age-appropriate chores. And if you want more ideas, you can definitely go to Pinterest. Is one of my favorite places to get ideas for things like this. But just just build it into their schedule. Let it be part of their day, and they'll learn. They learn a lot of things that way, like responsibility and things. So here's some tips for transitions. What you're looking at on the right-hand side here is a first then board. I've seen this work especially good with 2-year-olds. I know, 2-year-olds, even 2-year-olds. It works also extremely well with children that may be on the ASD spectrum. And I don't know why it works so well. It's like magic. If you have a child that might fit that, try it, you'll see. And you'll know you might want to try it if children have a real hard time just transitioning into the next thing. But even like, I want a cookie now, even that, right? What you do is you just write, okay, you want your cookie. Well, first we're going to have lunch. And then you put a little picture of a sandwich or something. And then you can have your cookie. Here's the paper. Can you put it in the square? There we go. You point to that. What are we going to do first? Lunch. That's right. And then cookie. That's right. So for some reason, this is magical for those littles and for children on the ASD spectrum. It just is so clear, so helpful. So I encourage, this is a simple little tool. I encourage you to try it out. Some other tips. So this is called a first then board. Some other tips are just giving little reminders, right? And there's a lot of ways we can do that We can give verbal reminders. Hey, it's almost time to clean up. Okay, start finishing up. Now that may or may not work. That works for some children. Some children need a little more support than that. There's something called visual timers. Visual timers. And they look like a regular timer only, and I should have put a picture up here, only what's different about them is that when you set the timer, say for 5 minutes, the part that they still have that's available to them is colored, like it's red or it's blue, right? And so they can actually see that part get smaller and smaller and smaller. So it's a little more tangible than just a little arrow. And some children respond really, really well to that. So if you put like a visual timer, or even you might already be thinking this, what do you call it? An hourglass, same thing, same sort of concept. It's visual. So if you put that within their eyesight and say, hey, it's when this is up, it's time to clean up. Or you can use it to say, oh, can you be done cleaning before this is up? Kids really respond well to that sometimes too, because it becomes a game. So having those visual things as well. Also songs, right? When the song turns on and the kids know that it's time to transition into cleanup time or into the next thing, certain songs can be helpful like that. These are all different ideas. All children and all families are different. So I'm giving you lots of ideas. You try what you think might work in your home. Because what works in one home doesn't always work in the other. So to do what works for you. And and have the child set a timer. So there's that one. All right, so here is a mom, and this will be a little bit more for like the younger set. So we're going to watch this little video on some transition tricks for routines, and she just has a few real simple ideas that can be very, very effective. So if your children are older, this may not be relevant, but I'm trying to kind of talk about all of us, so bear with us, and maybe there's something that she says that might actually give you an idea for something for an older child. So let's see what this mama has to say.
Welcome back to Sproutable. During routines, it can be a little tough to get our kiddos from one step to the next step. We call those transitions. And kids at a young age really need help with guiding from one step to the next. When they get really into something, it's hard to switch their focus. So using fun, using lightness, using humor can really connect with kids and make them want to leave whatever it is that they're doing and go to the next thing. So one idea is to use a transition object. It's kind of a boring name, but basically it's something fun that our kids can hold on to as they go from step to step. So maybe they pick out their favorite stuffy, and that is their buddy for that particular routine, like the after lunch routine headed to the nap, or after dinner headed to bedtime. And that little stuffy is going to go with them throughout the various parts and watch them and maybe sing to them and be their little friend throughout. Or maybe they have their special, they get to pick their one train that goes with them throughout, or a dinosaur. Kids also love to act like animals. So when you're actually moving from one step to the next, you can say, should we swing our arms like a monkey or hop like a bunny? You decide. So giving some limited choices within that. A lot of parents like to have fun racing from one step to the next, or even being in super slow motion with their bodies throughout. So coming up with fun ways just to get from point A to point B, and really making it personal to your children. So what are they into right now? Are they into mermaids? Are they into dinosaurs? Are they into trains? Incorporate that in there. And just having some fun and lightness, because then when our kids feel connected to us through the routine, they aren't so sad to say goodbye to us at the end. So for example, when they're going to sleep for a nap or for a bedtime, because they feel like they've had all this connection throughout. So find the fun, people, find the fun in routines. And stay tuned for more videos on helpful hints for routines.
So yeah, I thought she had a lot of really kind of novel, cute ideas of things that might be able to work with some of those little ones. Because honestly, moving from one thing to the new thing, that's a skill that we need to learn. We didn't come into this world knowing how to deal with that very well. We had to learn it. And so the more we can empower and teach our kids how to do these transitions smoothly and as they get younger, as they're younger, then as they get older, it'll be an easier and easier thing for them because they'll have learned that skill of how to transition well. So here we have just a few final ideas. For yourself, right? Use a timer sometimes. Sometimes that can really help. I was working with one family who was really struggling with just cleaning up. When you have several children in the house, it feels like you can never clean enough. Like the minute you do anything, it's just I have some grandchildren. They come over to my house, and within seconds, it feels like that little playroom that I have set up for them, it is covered in toys that a second ago were nice and neat in their little places. And that's just the nature of having kids. So one person that I was working with, she would set a timer. And while the children maybe they were playing Legos over there or whatever, she would do a 5-minute timer and she'd say, okay, for this 5 minutes, I'm gonna clean. And as soon as that timer went off, she'd be done. And she just gave herself grace that what didn't get done, didn't get done. But man, the house was 5 minutes cleaner now. Like there's a lot you can do in 5 minutes. So those are like little tips and tricks that some seasoned parents use. Using lists too can be very, very helpful. If we don't write things down, sometimes we'll forget them. Use family scheduling apps. So this square that you see on your screen right now, that's the logo for Cozy. I think it's COZI, and they are a great. There it is. That's how you spell it. COZI. They're a great family scheduler. So what that means is that everyone can have access to the same exact calendar, and each person can have their own color, and you know what's going on in everybody's life. A great way to stay on the same page with everyone. A great way to remind maybe your teenager, hey, remember, we've got this going on this day, that sort of thing. It even can set reminders like, hey, it's your trash day, or things like that. So and this has been around, so it's kind of tried and true, but there might be some other similar apps too. So I'd encourage you to check that out. Another app that is good for that kind of thing is called Our Home, another one to check out. And then, you know what, if you want something super 100% free and bare bones, you got Google Calendar. Does a lot of the same things, where you can just set up a family calendar, and you can sync in other people's calendars into it, so you can see everybody's. So if you feel like you can tackle something like that, that one's completely free. And then I just always want to stress the importance of making time in your schedule to connect with yourself, with your family, with your children, and to make time, like schedule it in for self-care. Because when you take care of yourself, then you can be fully present for your children. So let's just take a quick moment. Here, before we do that, let's look at this last quote by Kim John Payne. He says, with simplification, we can bring an infusion of inspiration to our daily lives. We can set a tone that honors our family's needs before the world's demands. Allow our hopes for our children to outweigh our fears. Realign our lives with our dreams for our family and our hopes for what childhood could and should be. So that's my final encouragement to you today from Kim John Payne. And I don't know if I mentioned it. If you read it on his last quote, he did write a book called Simplicity Parenting, among other books. So just take a quick moment to think about, what are the things that you that stood out for you today? Maybe there were a few things, maybe there's just one thing that you're like, you know what, I'm going to try that. Like maybe just looking at your schedule and see, do you have too many in breaths and not enough out breath? Like, are you sitting at a desk all day and you don't take a moment to just to go outside? Is that one thing that you could try? Maybe do a visual schedule for your family. What's one take home? What's one thing that you think that you could try? Well, today was brought to you by Resilient Arizona. Well, today was brought to you by the Crisis Response Network and the SAMHSA grant. And Resilient Arizona is part of that. And we want you to know that there is help out there. So if you call 211, if you feel like you really need some help, you're not alone. Call 211 and they can help you access just some free crisis counseling. I just want you to know that. And here's an updated version of that. Here's that Resilience Arizona Crisis Counseling Program. Just call 211. It's free, it's confidential, and it's available in Arizona and all of Arizona. Okay. And that concludes our presentation. We're so honored that you spent this time with us today. And we just, feel free to, if you have any questions, you can email me at B, like boy, like Beni, b.garcia, Garcia, at polarahealth.com. Have a wonderful day.